Hello guys, and hope you guys are doing well, and I hope you guys had a great weekend. So today we're going to be going into another topic in our Learning Python from Scratch 30 Days Coding Challenge. So basically we're going to be dealing with working with variables and expressions in Python, and then later on we're going to move into string operations, right? So this is a continuation from the previous day, which we went into, which we dug into data types in Python. So we basically covered the various data types, which are the basic ones, which are string, integers, floats, and booleans. So today we're just going to be going into variables, expressions, and then we're also going to be looking at some string operations. All right, let's go. So basically, an expression is basically a combination of, let's say, like variables, constants, and then operators, but then it gives you like a single value, right? Whereas when you have a statement in Python, it's basically just it doesn't really give you like a value. It's just a statement. Maybe you have like a print statement. You say print hello world. That's gonna give you a string in return, right? So now when we're dealing with expressions, you usually have an operator, right? So as you can see here, we have an addition operation expression here because we're dealing with the plus operation, and in Python, Python follows mathematical conventions. So the operations that you have here are the typical mathematics operations that you also have in in your calculations in mathematics. So you have the plus sign, you have the minus, you also have the subtraction, you have the division operation, you also have maybe if you want to do like a integer division operation, right, where you don't want to return like a float value, and maybe you don't want to have like a remainder, then you use the double slash, double forward slash, right? So these are basically the expressions that we have. So expressions usually come with an operator, and it gives you like a single value, produces a value for you when you're done, right? So these are all the mathematical operations, and you also have to recognize that in Python, right? I mentioned that it follows mathematical conventions. That means if you've done math, then basic math has to do with board math, right? So that's your bracket, multiplication, division. It just follows that order, right? So as you can see, you always know that in mathematical operations, the bracket always comes first, then multiplication, addition, subtraction, right? So you always have to recognize that it is following mathematical convention. So even when you're making, if even when you're doing writing a mathematical expression in Python and you're expecting a value, you have to keep at the back of your mind that you are calculating a mathematical expression, right? So now we also have variables, right? So we also have variables in Python. So basically, a variable is it's where you can store values. You can store your values into a variable, and then you can call them later. You can use them later on. So let's say maybe you have like a variable x here, and then you have an expression that you stored into the variable, and you know that this expression produces a value. So if you add all these values together, you're gonna get if you add all these numbers together, you're gonna get a value, right? So basically, you're storing that into this variable x, right? And then yeah, so you can also have a variable store the result of an operation between maybe a variable and a value. So for example, maybe if you have x over 60, maybe you already have x as a variable here, right? We already created x variable here, right? Let's say this is x that you've created, and then now you want to store a new value with this variable inside another variable. So you say maybe x, the value of x divided by 60 is this new variable. So it's still basically in mathematical expression format, right? So you can get y from this variable divided by 60. So basically you can store a variable inside of another variable, right? And then another thing you can do, again, you remember that Python is an interpreted language, right? So it interprets based on your line of code. So it interprets code based line by line, right? So in this situation now, you can also have maybe, let's say you already had like the value of x before, where maybe let's say x was let's say maybe x was 60. You can still create another value for x. Maybe you can say x is now 60 plus 200, or 60, let's say 60, um let's say 60 minus 2. Let's put this all in bracket, times 4 times 3, or yeah, or maybe, yeah, you can even save it like this. So this is gonna take the new value of x. So that's how it works. And also remember that Python has naming conventions for variables, so you cannot just give a variable a name that doesn't have a meaning, right? So you have to make sure that you give your variables meaningful names. So in this situation now, you have to make sure that for example, maybe if you're dealing with minutes, if you're dealing with time, you have to maybe just say, maybe, okay, let's say you name this album minutes. So this will give you like the total length of albums in minutes, right? So you just have to make sure that you're naming your variables. You're giving it a meaningful name. And then when you have like a variable where you want to like give it like two different names, maybe like total minutes, you cannot just give a white space like this. No, you have to separate them with the underscore, right? So make sure that you use an underscore when you have two different names that you're trying to put together, or you're gonna get an error. All right, so in this situation as well, you can see they're being named accordingly and correctly. I remember I told you that you can save a variable inside another variable. You can define a variable inside of another variable. So in this situation now, above here, we had total minutes set to this, right? Set to this value, right? And now we want to create hours. And you know that in hours, if you want to get hours, you divide minutes by 60 to get total hours. So in this situation now, this is the variable that we're storing here. So any value that this variable has, you divide it by 60 to get the total hours, and that will give you the variable for total hours. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so let's just try something now. Maybe you save total minutes. Let's say total minutes is 360, right? Let's say total minutes is 360. As we defined a new variable here, total minutes, and we equated it to what? To 360. We gave it a value of 360. So we're dealing with 360 minutes. And now we have total hours defined as the total minutes divided by 60. So what you're going to do now, if you want to print now you want to print total hours to see the value of your expression, right? So as you can see, the 6.0, right? It gave you 6.0 because 360 divided by 60 is 6. So this is basically 6 hours. I hope that makes sense. All right, guys. So now let's keep going. So far so good. We're doing well. All right. So as you can see, this is an expression to add 30. Expressions are just basically they're just basically if you see a statement that has maybe an operator, maybe it has like an operator, it has maybe something to do with a calculation, it has something to do with these expressions, any of these expressions, then you know that you're dealing with an operator. So just be very observant, right? That's the difference between an expression and a statement, basically. All right, so okay, so basically now we're done with working with variables and expressions in Python. So it's very intuitive and very explanatory, self-explanatory. So We don't really need to go too in depth into this. It's basically just you dealing with basic arithmetic operations. You know, you can be an addition operation, it can be a subtraction operation, but you know that it's always going to give you a single value. You understand? All right, guys. So let's move into string operations, right? This is the real deal. All right. So basically a string is um basically a string is something that you save in quotation marks, right? A string can be a sentence, it can be a word, it can be numbers, it can be special characters that you save in quotation marks, right? So basically it's like a statement. It's a statement, and you know you save it in quotation marks. So any statement that any value or anything that you see stored in wrapped around with single or double quotes, you just know that you're dealing with a string, right? All right. So now yeah, so this is basically a string. You see the name of a person here. This is Michael Jackson. You've saved it as a string, and then you can also have integers or digits that are saved as strings as well. So in this situation now you have 1 2 3 4 5 6. This is not an integer. Don't you so let me show you something. So one one and these two things are not the same, right? In this case this is an int, and in this case this is a string. So the type of this basically is an integer, and then the type of this is a string, primarily because you're dealing with what, when you see this quotation, when you wrap an integer in quotation marks, it becomes a string, right? In that case you're dealing with a statement, right? So please take note of that. So if you have maybe an expression like let me show you something real quick. If I have an expression like this, if you have an expression like this, what this is going to print is it's a new string 12. It's not going to print, you're basically concatenating two strings. That's what you call string concatenation, when you combine two strings together. So you're basically going to get this as the result, right? But when you're dealing with an expression, let's say 1 plus 2, of course this is going to give you 3. It's going to give you 3 if you print it on your console, right? So this is going to give you 3 because you're dealing with integers. So basically you're performing an operation, an addition operation. But in this case, Python is reading this as a concatenation of two different strings based on the double quote. So it's going to give you 12. So please take note of that. And yeah, we already mentioned that a string can be a combination of special characters, right? So as you can see, there are many different special characters here that you're dealing with, and this is also a string. So take note. And this is how you can print your string as well. All right, so now let's go into indexing, right? So basically a string is an ordered sequence, right? So and each element each element in that sequence, you can access it using index. So that's what we call index. So index is basically the positioning of an element in a string, or yeah, in that sequence of a string, right? So maybe you, for example, we already defined Michael Jackson. So basically this is the variable name. We have set a variable and we have set it to a string value of Michael Jackson, right? So now this is Michael Jackson. which has been saved into the name variable. Please take note of that. And now if we want to access like the index of each element here, each element in this variable is represented by an index, as you can see here. So indexes usually start from 0, right? It starts from you start counting from 0. So basically the first element is going to be m, and m is represented by the index 0. And even the space are also a character. So it's represented, in this case now we have the spacing as 7. So if you want to access the space in this variable, you would have to specify the index as 7, right? So now if you want to print the first element in this string, you can access. So let's say name, and then you put it in into a parenthesis. Is this? Yeah, so you put it basically into parenthesis to access the index. So we already recognize that the first index here is what? Is 0. So this will give you, this is representing the first index. This space in here is representing the what? The 7th index, right? So if you want to access that particular index, this is what you do, right? Okay, there's an error there because we did not okay, let's just define this here now. We need to define our variables and give it a value. Michael Jackson. Let me put this in quotes. So as you can see, now that we defined our string and we assigned it to a variable, we are able to print the first index, right? So as you can see, the first index is what? Is m. Now let's print the 7th index. So the 7th index is that blank space. That's the reason why you can't see anything here, right? And then if you print the 6th index, can you guess what it's going to be? Okay, so as you can see, it's an L, because you see the 7th index is what? Is 7. The 6th index is what? Is L. So just make sure that you have that at the back of your mind. And then when you want to print the 13th index, what do you think is going to be? Of course it's going to be O, because from here you can see that it's 13. All right, so now we also have something called negative indexing. So you can use negative indexing in strings to specify the last element of the string, right? So basically we have Michael Jackson. The last element in this is n, so that will be -1, and then you count down to you get to -15, which will give you the value of the first element of this string, right? So you're counting down from -1 to -15, right? So this will give you the first element. But if you want to use positive indexing, of course you're going to start from 0. So -15 and 0 indexing in this case is pretty much the same thing. And it's -15 because if you count the number of elements in this string, it gives you a total of what? It gives you a total of 15. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. So as you can see, there are 15 elements in this string, right? All right. So if you print this now, what do you think you're gonna get? Of course, you're gonna get n as the last value. And then if you want to print the first element, you get this as well. So now there's also something called we also have the length function. So the length function is basically used to calculate the length of a string, right? So we already know that this is the string, right? This is the string that we've already saved in the variable name, right? So if you want to calculate the length of the string now, it's going to give you 15, right? And you can also call the variable that we already created earlier, right? So length of name it will also give you the same thing because the variable um, saves the string. So you can either call the variable or you can call the string directly, but it's pretty much better to call the variable name since you could be storing a lot of objects in your in your variable already. So that will save you a lot of time. And now there's also something called string slicing. So you can basically obtain multiple characters from a string using slicing. So you just specify the index and then you basically give it a range, right? So that's how you do slicing. So maybe if you want to obtain maybe just the first four characters or the first four elements in your string, you're basically going from index 0 to index 4, right? So basically, you call in your name variable and then you specify the index to which where you want to go. So remember, we already named it 0, 1, 2, 3, 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4, right? So this is where it's ending. So one thing you have to notice is that when you specify an index, it does not take the value of the last element, right? So if you say 0 to 4, it excludes the last index. So basically, we're going 0, 1, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is basically the fourth index here, right? This is the fourth. But what it does is it excludes the 4, the fourth one. So you're basically taking in the values of um, you're basically taking the values of 0 to 3, right? So take note of that. As you can see from here, sorry, as you can see from here as well. So we see that A is index 4, right? So what it does is if you say if you call the variable and you want to slice, right, and you say 0 to 4, it's not going to take in the last 4. It's only going to take the first 4, which are 0, 1, 2, 3, right? This first part here. I hope that makes sense. All right, and it's the same thing as this one as well. We can see that this is if you specify if you want to slice from maybe to the from 8 to 12, we already know that this is the 8. This is the 8 element here. Jack is the 8th element, and now S is the 12th. But remember, we're not including the 12th one. We're gonna exclude the 12th one that we're specifying here. So it's gonna be Jack. So it's gonna be JACK. So J is the 8th, A is the 9th, this is the 10th, this is the 11th. So we're basically going from 8 to 11, and then we're excluding the 12th one. Please take note of that. Yeah. All right. So let's say we want to specify from 0 to 3, right? So don't forget, it's gonna exclude the third element. It's gonna exclude the third element, right? So it's gonna print you what? It's gonna print you a string with Mike. So take note. And then we also have something called stride. We also have something called stride, and you can use a stride to specify maybe a special operation that you want to perform maybe in a string. Maybe you want to like just take in every two elements, right? You want to take in every two elements starting from the index, right? So basically, or maybe, yeah, so you want to take in every two elements. So you can use a stride to do that. So what a stride will do is it will skip every two elements and then it will give you basically this value because you specify that, okay, I want to jump every two elements. So 0 to 0 to 4, and then it will give you this string as the result. So let's say maybe we want to jump 3. Let's say we want to do 3. What do you think is going to be? So it's basically going to be MH. It will now jump to what? MH, and then it will jump to 6, and then it will jump to 9, and then it will jump to 12. So what do you think the result is going to be? So it's going to be what? MH. The string value is going to be MH L A S, right? So let's try that and see. So as you can see, just like we said it, it gives you MHLAS. So basically, we're making a stride of 3. It's just is very self-explanatory. You're basically making strides, right? And then we also have something called slicing, right? So slicing, you want, maybe if you want maybe if you want the first if you just want to deal with maybe the first 5 elements, and then you only use the stride in the first 5 elements, you specify the index 0 to 5. So it's basically gonna print what? It's gonna print MI. It's gonna only be dealing with MICHA, right? Because you already specified the index 0 to 5. And remember, we're not gonna take in the last element when you specify an index from 0 to 5. You understand? So it's basically taking it from 0 to 4. So this is what we're dealing with, right? And then you want to specify a stride of 2, right? So within this range, within this index, you want to specify a range or a stride of 2. So basically, you're going to get M, C, and A. I hope that makes sense. Because what we did is, okay, we specified the index 0 to 5, right? This is the range for 0 to 5. So we've already made a range. We've already made an index. We already showed the range of values that we want to deal with, right? We want to deal with 0 to 5, right? So 0 to 5 is basically this element here. So if we're to print 0 to 5, you would see MICHA. But now we're going further to specify that within this 0 to 5, we want to make a stride of 2 elements, right? So basically, we're going to deal with M, C, and A, right? So let's print that and see the result. So as you can see, it's M, C, and A. Now, string concatenation is where you combine strings using an addition symbol. Now, take note that this is not an operation. It's not an operation. It's basically plus is also used for, plus is an operator. When plus is used as an operator, you are going to get an expression. But when it's used for concatenating 2 strings, you're still dealing with a statement, right? So as you can see, we have a statement here. And we remember that we said the name. We already have like a name variable that we already said. So you can call a variable, you can concatenate 2 variables, or you can concatenate a variable and a string, right? But make sure that they are still they are of the same type, right? So you cannot concatenate an integer with a string. It's going to give you an error. You have to make sure that you are concatenating a string with a string, right? So in this case now, in our name variable, we already said it as Michael Jackson, right? So let's say we want to print this statement now. So let's say we print statement. Remember, you don't need to put double quotes because this is a variable, right? This is a variable. So what this variable is going to print is it's going to print the variable that we already stored. We already stored Michael Jackson into this variable. Remember that we use variables for storing what we use variable for storing values. We use it for storing data, right? So we can use them later on, and that's exactly what we're doing here. So we're going to use Michael Jackson here, and then we're going to concatenate Michael Jackson with "is the best," right? So let's print that and see. So you can see Michael Jackson is the best. So now let's give a space here. So if you don't want to make that mistake of not having spaces between your characters, you make sure that you give a spacing right after the quotation, so that you can have a space. Because if you don't do that, this is what it's going to print, Michael Jackson. So you have to like give a space here, give a space here, and print something. So now let's try something. Like I said, remember I said you cannot concatenate a string with an integer. So let's say maybe we save the name now as 123, right? If you print this, it's going to give you a type error. So you see, it's going to give you a type error. you cannot concatenate an integer and a string, right? But let's say maybe you turn this into a string. Remember, 1, 2, 3 is an integer. An integer that you put in quotes automatically becomes what? A string. So this is basically a string now. So as you can see, you can concatenate two strings together. So now 1, 2, 3 is the best, right? So let's just delete this because we're already using our name variable as Michael Jackson for the sake of other tasks that we're going to do. Right, so name Michael Jackson. All right. So now if you want to replicate the value of your string, you can multiply the string by the number of times that you will want to replicate it. So maybe if you want to replicate the result of your string, you multiply it 3 times um, by Michael Jackson, right? So this will give you 3 copies of your string, right? So yeah. So let's try this and see something. Let's print this. Yeah, so this basically gives you 3. Yeah, so you can see. All right. Setting the original values. All right, so we've already covered that. All right, now so let's talk about escape sequences. So in Python, escape backslashes represent the beginning of a new escape sequence. So escape sequences are usually maybe you want to start a new line, you want to give a space, you use an escape sequence to do that, right? So in this situation now, we want to print Michael Jackson is the best. So this \n is basically telling you that you want a new line. So this is going to print Michael Jackson on one line, and then is the best will be printed on a corresponding line, new line, okay? So let's print this and see. So you can see Michael Jackson, what is the best. And now another escape sequence is the tab escape sequence. So maybe you want to give like a tab, you want to give a spacing, right? So as you can see, Michael Jackson is the best. So take note of escape sequences, because a lot of times when you use a hash in your code, Python will read it as an escape sequence, right? So I'm going to be showing you how to evade that in case maybe you just want to include a slash and you are not trying to use an escape sequence. I'm going to show you how to do that. But then if you, yeah, so this is it basically. So if you want to use maybe that hash, you include 2 backward slash, right? So now you have it. Because you included 2, now you can have the one that you wanted, right? Or most commonly, and the better way of doing this is, including an R in this. This basically is telling you that this is a raw string. So you're basically telling Python that you want this to print as it is, no tabs or anything. This is a raw string. So wherever you see an R there is basically trying to specify that you want a raw string. This is very, very important when you're dealing with regex, which we're going to be going into later. Regex are regular expressions. Maybe you're dealing with special characters, right? Maybe you want to specify the path of your document. You know that you deal with backward slash a lot if you're specifying the path and the location of your document that you're trying to call in Python. So you make sure that you include this as a raw string so that Python doesn't interpret this as an escape sequence, right? So let's print this and see. All right, perfect. So now let's go into string manipulation operations, right? So basically a string manipulation operation will basically help you to manipulate the data, but then it's going to result into a new value or a new expression or something, right? So you make sure that you save it into a new variable. So for example, in this case now we define the variable as Thriller is the sixth audio album, right? This is what we'll save into this variable A. So now if you print A alone, you're gonna get this. You're gonna get Thriller is the new album. But now in this situation, we're trying to print let me just remove this and I'll bring it back so that you can truly understand what I'm trying to say. Okay, so okay, let's just leave it there. Okay, so now in this case, now you want to print okay, let me just print it so you can follow along. So basically you printed this before upper, right? Gives you a value of what? This variable Thriller is the sixth audio album, right? And then now B, you define B. Yeah, this is where you want to manipulate the data now. This is all in lowercase, right? Now there's a special method there's a special method where you can use to convert a string into uppercase, right? So basically this is the variable value A, right? And now you want to change A to all uppercase and then you save it into a new variable B, right? So basically A upper will give you what? We give you a new variable B with everything in uppercase, right? Good. And now we have another method that is used for manipulation. It's called replace. So you basically just impute, maybe you already have your string here and now you want to replace a value, maybe an element or something inside the string with another value, right? So you're basically replacing replacing a substring with a new string, right? So this is a substring inside of this string. Michael is a substring of what? Of this entire string, right? And now you want to replace Michael with what? With Janet. So you call this replace method. So now it's going to be this variable A. So let's see what's going to happen if we print B. I'm going to print B in just a moment, right? So in this situation now you want to print, so now you're saving B as A dot replace Michael with Janet. That's basically how you read it, right? So now if you print B, what do you think you're gonna get? You're gonna get Janet Jackson is the best. So what you did is you used the replace method to replace Michael with Janet, right? So maybe you can also do that maybe with just maybe an element inside of this string. Maybe you just want to replace A with B or something like that. Wait, no. Let's say maybe you want to replace M with, I don't know what's gonna happen here, but let's see how we let me see. So you see, you basically replace M with J. So now you have what? We have what? Michael Jackson. That's a funny name. Alright. Okay, let me test out something real quick. Let's say maybe we wanna replace J, or we want to replace A. A is very common here. So let's say we want to replace A with B. Right. So basically everywhere that has an A inside of this string, you have replaced it with a B. So you can see Mick Bell Jibeskin. Okay, that was cringe. All right. So now we have another method that is called the find method. So basically you are using the find method to find the substring inside of a string, right? So basically yeah, so basically you're going to use the find to locate maybe a substring or an element inside of your string, right? So yeah, All right. So let's say now maybe you impute an argument inside of this method, right? So you want to find what? You want to find L, right? You want to find L. So basically it's going to print the index of this, right? It's going to print the first index. It's not going to print the two index. So as you can see, L starts from what? It starts from 5, right? So it's going to print this as the first index. And then, okay, let's try another example. Let's say maybe you want to print IC, right? You want to find IC inside of this string, right? What do you think is going to print? First of all, it's going to locate the index of the first element, and that's what it's going to print. So in this case, you want to print IC, right? What do you think is going to print? Of course, it's going to print this index I, right? 1. You understand? So if you print I, it's still the same thing. Even if you write ICH, it's still going to print 1. So it takes into account basically the first element of the substring that you want to print. So as you can see, it's still the same thing. And maybe if you're looking for a substring that's not present inside of this, you're going to get a return value of -1. So let's say you want to find me in this. What do you think you're going to get? You're going to get -1 because me is not a substring of this. You understand? All right. And now maybe if you want to print a list, we use the split method as well. We use the split method to, you know, split a list and then return return the value, and then it returns you a list, right? So in this case, this string is going to be split into a list, right? Let me see. So as you can see, it is printed just printed a new list, right? You've printed a new list. So it's basically subtracting a substring into a list, right? Let's say maybe we had more. Michael Jackson is the god, father of modern pop, right? You split it again. You basically split this string into multiple substrings, right? So you basically splitted it into a list. So take note of all this. Take note of all this. So that's what you pretty much use the split method for. And now we also have regular expressions. Remember I mentioned regular expressions earlier. So it's the short form. Regex is a short form of regular expressions, and you use it for matching and handling strings. And this is basically what you have when you're trying to do like a form validation, or maybe you're trying to find data in maybe a subset or something like that. You basically use the regular expressions module, right? So in Python now you have to import this module, and this is RE. RE stands for regular expressions, right? So Python already has this as a built-in module, right? So if you want to use it for regular expressions, you just import it. And then the regex module in itself, it has many functions that you can use with it. So you can basically search, you can split, you can find, and you can also use the sub as well. So once you import the regular expression module, yeah, so now you've basically imported the regular expressions module, and now you're using a search function to find maybe specific patterns in the string, right? So in this case, now you've assigned Michael Jackson is the best, right, to S1. S1 is the name of the variable, right? So you stored Michael Jackson is the best into this variable, right? I remember, since regular expressions has to do with like a lot of symbols, usually we use this R to denote that this is a raw this is raw data, right? So you don't want to it's safe for you to just include this in front in case you're dealing with special characters, right? And then so yeah, so this is the pattern that you're looking for. You're looking for Jackson, right? So what you want to search for Jackson inside of Michael Jackson is the best, right? So now you assign it to a new variable, right? Because now you're performing a new you want to perform a new search function, right? So now you're basically searching for pattern in S1. So you call this module and then the function that is present inside of it. So this is basically the regex module, and then this is the function, the search function that's inside of it. So now you're searching for pattern in S1. I remember what we said pattern as. We said pattern as what? R Jackson. So basically you're looking for what? Jackson in this variable here, right? So let's see what we're gonna get. So in this case now, what do you think is gonna print? Because now, okay, now we're using an if and else statement. If and else statement, we'll have to come back later to that but this is the very basic and very simple understanding of if and else statement. So it's basically saying that if there is a result, then print that there's a match found. But if there's not, then you print match not found. But in this case, we know that Jackson is a substring of Michael Jackson is the best. So we're most likely, so we're definitely gonna get a matches found here, right? So let's see. Oh, sorry, I need to make sure that you run every cell. So I need to run this cell for that to work. Okay. So as you can see now, the match has been found, right? So supposing maybe you want to find maybe David inside of this. Let's say you change this to David, right? And you want to find it. We know that David is not a part of this, right? So you're gonna get match not found. So let's return this back to Jackson. I remember Python is case sensitive. So Jackson like this. Jackson like this is not the same thing as Jackson. So you're not gonna get the same value. So you can see match not found. So make sure that you are very careful with that. So see match has been found. Alright, so regular expressions are patterns that are used to match and manipulate strings of text. So there are very many special sequences in regex that you can use to match maybe specific characters or patterns. So this is what you basically use, like all this a lot of form validations. Maybe you want to put your password, you want to put in your email, and maybe they tell you that it has to be case sensitive, or maybe your password has to have special characters, lowercase, uppercase. Regex is basically what is being used there, right? So it's a very important aspect of web development as well. All right, so we basically have the special sequences. This is used for matching digits from 0 to 9, and this is used for matching non-digit characters. As you can see, a string here. This is used for matching any word character. So just all this, you can just you don't need to know everything right now, but you can, as you use it more and more, you'll get familiar with it and you get used to it. So yeah. All right, and now we have a simple use of this. We want to use the pattern here, right? So remember, we're printing this as a raw text. We're printing this raw as a raw string, right? So now you save this pattern, right? And you say remember, this is a digit, right? We have 10 digits. That's why we have up to 10 here. So what this will do is this pattern will match any 10-digit pattern that you find in maybe your string. And here like this, we already have a text that we've saved this string into the text variable, right? So my phone number so. And then we also have a match variable that we've also created. So basically you're defining three different variables here. So you already have the pattern. This is the regex pattern, right? And then remember the reason why we're using this R, as you can see here, there are backslashes here. If you don't use this, there's going to be an error because it's going to print this on every new line. Remember the hash represents what? It represents a tab. It represents a tab. So you're going to be getting a tab of DDDs. You understand? So now you have a match here, and then this match is the final variable that we've set. And now we're calling the regex module, and then we're searching for this pattern in this text. Remember, we've already defined the pattern. What do you think it's going to print? Of course, it's going to print this. This is a 10-digit value, and we've already specified the pattern, and so it matches this pattern here. So now let's use this if and else statement as well. So you say if there is a match, you print phone number found. So this is a string, right? You're printing this string, right? And then you're printing match.group. So group is a method that will put everything together and print the value. So as you can see here, there's a match that has been found. So let's see what's going to happen when we print. So it says phone number found, right? Phone number found. Let me see something real quick. Let me see what happens here. So it still prints it, but it doesn't give you that it doesn't group it together. So let's just call the group method as well. So now you have grouped everything together. No need for all that extra information. So maybe let's say maybe you remove one of this, you remove one of this. What do you think is going to happen? It's going to print no match because now we've reduced it from 10 to 9. So you see no match. All right, and now we're going to be dealing with regular expression patterns. You're using the okay. So now we're going to be dealing with words, right? So now you define your pattern here, right? And you're saying that, okay, remember capital W, not small w. Capital W is representing what? A non-word character. So inside of this is going to print what? It's going to print a non-word character. You understand? It's going to print a non-word character. So if you want to do that, so you basically use the find all. So the find all is going to find everything. It's not just going to print just one, right? It's going to print everything that is, this method is going to print everything that is not a word inside of this string, right? So let's see. So as you can see, this is the first non-word character, comma. You also have remember this is the first one. It's wrapped in a string because it's literally a string. Remember, a special character can also be a string, right? So this other one as well is a special character, which is the space. So you've seen this space. Remember, space also takes an index, right? It's also a value in a string, right? It's also an element in a string. And then we have the last one, which is this. So they are basically 3, right? So they are basically 3. If you want, you can print the length so that you can confirm as well. You can confirm like the length of the matches as well, so you can see the matches are 3, like I specified earlier. All right. So let me see. I want to try something. Let me see. Let's replace this with the search method, right? So if you use the search method, what this does, okay, let's print this as so if you use the search method instead, it's not going to print everything. So that's the difference between the search and the find all. So what this will do is it's just going to print only the first one, and then it's not going to take into account the remaining ones, right? So now we have a new variable called s2 statement 2 basically, And we're saying here that Michael Jackson was a singer and known as the king of pop, right? So you see how this is very important, because you can use this for to extract information from your data. Like you can just call this, maybe you have like a string of data and you want to extract information from this, you can just easily use this method um, to find what you're looking for. So it's very, very important in data analysis as well. So yeah, so basically now we've saved this statement into a variable, right? And now we want to use the find all function to find all the occurrences of as in the string, right? So basically, um, before we're saving it as a pattern, right? But now we want to find all occurrences of this word in this string, right? You can go ahead to save it as a variable, but it's not really important, right? It's not really important for you to do that. So yeah, so you can find all occurrences of as. So as you can see, it's appearing twice. If you use the search instead, it's gonna print something different. It's not gonna print what you expect. So you see, it's only printing one. It's only printing one match, whereas we have two. So make sure that you're using find all function for this. And then we have the split function, which splits a string into an array of substrings. It's just like the one we used earlier. Remember that we used string split for string manipulation, right? So we used it to manipulate our string, right? So it's pretty much the same thing here as well. That's what we're doing. So as you can see, it's splitting the strings. So basically you're calling the split function inside of the regex module, and you're telling it that you want to split um yeah, so this basically represents a string, right? This s means string. So basically you're basically just splitting it at every substring, right? So take that into note. All right, so that's the result. Here we have a list. So remember, anytime you use the split, you're going to get a list. You're going to get a list which will be stored in an array. So you see this is called an array. And then you can also use the sub method as the sub function as well. So in this case now we've defined a pattern as king of pop, right? And now we want to replace legend in this, right? We want to replace legend with something. So now we'll create a new string, we create a new variable, right? And we store this function inside of it. So basically you're gonna print so basically inside of this pattern you want to use this replacement, right? Remember, we already stored let's see what this prints. So basically Michael Jackson, so it's gonna print Michael Jackson was a singer and is also known as a legend, right? Because you called it to replace, right? You said you want to replace legend with 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 s s with king of pop, right? So this is basically the replacement that you remember. This was our S2 statement at first. Michael Jackson was a singer and known as the king of pop, right? So what we did here was we replaced um, king of pop with what? We replaced it with legend, right? So this was the replacement that we wanted to do. So we called the pattern here, and then we also mentioned the replacement that we want, and then we specified what variable or string we wanted to replace that in. So that's why you have this, right? You have the pattern here, king of pop, replacement, legend, statement, which was Michael Jackson was a singer and is also known as the king of pop. So once that's done, you get your final value. It's perfect. All right, guys. So that will be all for today. We've basically covered expressions and variables, and we've also gone into string operations in Python. All right, so I'm gonna see you guys tomorrow for another day, and thank you guys for sticking to the end, and hopefully this was very helpful to your journey in learning Python from scratch. I'm also learning, so I'm also on my way. Thank you guys so much.